Our Lord in heaven, we're thankful for the morning that's before us. And in this morning, we will enjoy fellowship and the time together in your word, time together around Christ. We pray that we'll be encouraged and helped by all the things we discussed today. To the glory of Christ, we ask it. Amen. Amen. Okay. So, today we're going to be talking about introducing some special matters in word study. And the first one, matter we're going to discuss is usually not considered a special matter, it's considered a normal matter, and that is word studies. But I put this under special matters because it needs a little special attention. Thank you. Because this is an area of Bible study that is often abused, and usually with good intentions. There's not usually some diabolical reason why Bible believers will do these badly. But as you see, number one in your outline, word studies, easy or easy does it? Word studies are very popular because there are affordable reference works that make it possible for almost anybody to read about different Bible words. And they give the student of the scripture a chance to peek into the original languages of the Bible, whether they be Hebrew or Aramaic or Greek. And of course, we believe in the priority of the original languages. That is, the original languages which the Spirit inspired. It was in those languages, not in English or Chinese or German or Latin. Those are not the languages in which the Spirit inspired the book. So we always appeal back to the original text, to the original language. And these sorts of studies are often rewarding and enriching, like digging up nuggets of gold. But beware, because there is a fair amount of fool's gold out there when it comes to word studies. And maybe I'm going to steal some thunder from later in the series, but I was watching a video last night about a company based out of Texas that operates in Israel. It's called Zion Oil and Gas. And they're drilling for oil in Israel based upon some prophecies in Genesis 49 and Deuteronomy 33. Things like, Asher shall dip his foot in oil. So based on that statement, they're drilling in the area of the tribe of Asher, in the bottom part, the foot, thinking that that's about oil. And the problem is, the word oil in the Bible means olive oil or animal fat, not petroleum. That's a word study error. And millions of dollars are being spent because a Christian man who thinks the Lord is leading him to do this has committed some bad hermeneutical problems. And there's some other passages too that he tries to do the same thing with. Word study. Now, in their videos, they acknowledge that some scholars say that this passage is about olive oil, and perhaps it is, but there seems to be more, so they kind of equivocate when it comes to that. That's an example of a fool's gold passage. Well, why are word studies a special matter? Why is this not just in the regular? Because word studies are probably the most common kind of Bible study that Christian people engage in, including pastors. For many pastors, the depth of their exegesis, their drawing out of the text, is often word studies. But word studies are very often subject to unintentional abuse. And again, unintentional is a key word here. I'm not imputing bad motives to Zion Oil and Gas or anyone else like that. Too often, students use word study tools in a vacuum, not understanding that words take on their particular meaning in context. Word study, therefore, is only one part of Bible study. It's easy to think that word meanings are cut and dried, almost like Bible dictionaries drop out of heaven. But the study of Bible words is also an ongoing discipline. We continue to learn more about the different Hebrew and Greek and Aramaic words. There is no inspired dictionary. We know a lot, and we've known a lot for a long time, but we're still learning. There's still little Not things that are create sea changes in our understanding of the Bible, but little growths in our understanding of particular words. Word study errors are often easy to repeat, especially if they're popularized by respected teachers. And I mean, some of the most highly respected teachers they'll say something and everyone just, oh, well, that must be right, you know. And a great example of this, number one in your notes, the term Abba. Abba.
Question.
Which is an Aramaic word for father. It shows up 3 times in the New Testament. Let's take a look at these 3 passages. Mark chapter 14, verse 36. Mark 14, verse 36. Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane. In fact, we'll back up to verse 34. And he said to them, "My soul is deeply grieved to the point of death. Remain here and keep watch." And he went a little beyond them and fell to the ground and began to pray that if it were possible, the hour might pass him by. And he was saying, "Abba, Father, all things are possible for you. Remove this cup from me. Yet not what I will, but what you will." Now, notice that in your English Bible you have Abba. Basically, what this is this is an Aramaic word that was written by Mark in Greek letters and now has been spelled out in English letters. So Abba this is what we call transliterated. It's not translated, it's transliterated. Right after it, you have a translation, Father. And in the Greek text, there is a full-blown Greek word right there. So this is the first of 3 times that Abba shows up. Let's look at the next one. Romans chapter 8, verse 14. Romans 8, verse 14. Oh, you know what? That's not the right verse, but I'm close.
It's down in
Yeah, it is
the
verse,
next,
I see, yes,
15.
15, thank you. A typo. I will castigate the scribe. I cut off his hand. All right, Romans 8, let's look at verse 14 as well. "For all who are being led by the Spirit of God, these are sons of God. For you have not received a spirit of slavery, leading to fear again, but you have received a spirit of adoption as sons, by which we cry out, Abba, Father. The Spirit himself testifies with our spirit that we are children of God. And if children, heirs also, heirs of God and fellow heirs with Christ, if indeed we suffer with him, so that we also may be glorified with him. For I consider the sufferings of the present time not worthy to be compared to the glory that's to be revealed in us." And I'll stop there, but I wanted to read the part about suffering because that's actually key as to why Paul uses this Aramaic word. This is actually a quotation from Jesus. Let's look at the other instance, Galatians chapter 4, verse 6. Galatians chapter 4. We'll back up to verse 4. "But when the fullness of time came, God sent forth his Son, born of a woman, born under the law, so that he might redeem those who were under the law, that we might receive the adoption as sons. Because you are sons, God has sent forth the Spirit of his Son into our hearts, crying, Abba, Father. Therefore you are no longer a slave, but a son. And if a son, then an heir through God." All right. Now, it has been, if you go to the second page of your notes, it has been very, very popular in Bible studies and pulpits and other places to say that this Aramaic word, and I say, confess here, I have said this years before I started teaching Aramaic. It's been very popular to say that the word Abba means daddy. You've heard this before, right? Maybe you've repeated it. It's a concept that's been repeated as fact by many pastors, Bible teachers, and popular commentaries. But this is a word study error that was introduced by a German New Testament scholar in the 1960s. So there's a German New Testament scholar. He's not even an evangelical scholar, but he was searching through the New Testament trying to find what he thought were the original words of Jesus. Because, you know, Matthew and Mark and Luke and John, they put words in his mouth, supposedly. So he's sort of sifting through it, and he came to the conclusion that this phrase, Abba, must have been one of the very few words of Jesus we can be certain that he actually said. And he built a whole theology around this little phrase. Actually, he didn't quite say that Abba meant daddy. He said that it was an affectionate form of address, something like dear father. And then it was English expositors who read some of his articles who were guilty of taking this word study and turning it into daddy. This word study is faulty on numerous grounds. Okay, it is true that sometimes Abba did mean daddy, but that is only in later Aramaic. We're talking about Aramaic in the 300s and the 400s. So, you know how it is, words change meaning as they pass through time. You know, even within the last century, the word gay used to mean happy. Everyone is happy and gay. And that word is almost never used that way anymore. It's changed, it's nuanced. And the same was with Abba. It is true that in the time of the early church fathers, some of the later church fathers, Abba did mean daddy, but it doesn't seem to have meant that in biblical times. Other Jewish writers use Abba to refer to God without any sense of daddiness. I made up that word. If we're making up meanings, I can make up words, right? Jesus and Paul were not introducing a new view of God when they said that our hearts cry out, Abba. You know, there were Jewish writers in their day who were already describing God, or giving him the title Abba. The Aramaic word Abba is always followed by the Greek word pater. So remember the text we looked, Abba, Father, Abba, Father, Abba, Father. The Greek word for father, right after it, is pater. It is not the Greek word patridion, which means daddy. There is a Greek word for daddy, and it's not used. So what you've got is the Aramaic word followed by a translation, and the translation does not mean daddy. So actually, this is not in your notes, but the Hebrew word for father is, do you know what it is? It's Ab. You know, like we've got the name Abraham, which is father of a great multitude. You know, so Aramaic is actually Abba. It's just doubling this letter, and then this on the end right here, the A, is a definite article. It means the Father. And that definite article is sometimes used, oh Father. That's the idea. Oh Father. There is kind of an endearment in that you have this open access to him and can appeal to him, but it doesn't mean daddy. So what's really significant about these Abba references? Again, the word Abba most literally means the Father, but here the article, the part, indicates direct address. Oh, Father.
The Father from God the Father?
That's right. It is referring to God the Father here. You know, the biggest thing that's happening is that you're switching languages. Now, let me show you again. So in Aramaic, you would write this word this way, Ava. Now, when Mark writes the gospel of his gospel, he doesn't use these letters. He uses Greek letters. And then we take those Greek letters and turn them into English letters. You know, so we've gone from, this is how it would have been written. We've turned it into letters that we can recognize. But why are we switching languages at all? I mean, the Gospel of Mark is written in Greek. And also we got this Aramaic word popping out there. The book of Romans is written in Greek. Galatians is written in Greek. This is, we are switching languages from the dominant language here, which is Greek, to the less common language, Aramaic, and then back to the more common language, Greek. This is a device in speech called code switching. Code switching. And those of us for whom English is our only language, we're not going to be as keen on this, but sociologists have observed that immigrants who are in a country where they're a minority, let's say they've adopted the native language, but they still speak they've adopted the local language, but they still speak their native language, all right? So there are certain times when they switch to their local language. And it's interesting, and this is not ironclad, but there's some interesting observations. Like, let's say, I'm just going to pick Spanish, and I don't know Spanish, but let's say you've got Spanish family, and the kid is not behaving, and they say to him in Spanish, stop that, whatever. And then he keeps on doing it. Then they switch to English because English is considered the dominant language. There's a sense of authority, whereas the Spanish language is the language of familia. Now, again, this isn't ironclad, but this is an observation that I've noticed that people who are multicultural tend to switch language like this for some particular purposes. So here, you're switching to the less common language. You're switching to the more familial language. There is a sense of nearness because here's Jesus speaking in his more native tongue. Paul as well would have known Aramaic well, and he uses this word. Actually, I think he's quoting Jesus when he writes to the Romans and the Galatians. By shifting to a lesser known language, there's often a heightened sense of insider relationship. Insider relation. You know what it's like if you speak only English and you're with friends and all of a sudden they start talking in Spanish and you're like, I guess I'm not on the end. I don't know. There's something they want to say that, but if it's the other way around, if you're in the minority and suddenly the conversation shifts to your language, there's this sense, this is something for us to know, right? So this is a shift to insider language. It's a subtle thing. It would have resonated well with particularly a Jewish audience. The idea is that he is our Father. There is a sense of nearness and intimacy. Oh, Father. But again, it's not daddy. Daddy is intimate, but you don't have to have daddiness to have intimacy with the Father. Also, in these three instances, in the broader context, it's especially clear in Mark and in Romans, not as clear in Galatians, but there is the speaker or the audience is subject to suffering. Where is Jesus when he cries out, Abba, Father? He's in Gethsemane, looking towards the cross. What's Paul talking to the Romans about when, being sons of God, even though now for the meantime you suffer, right? And Galatians doesn't have as much discussion of that in the immediate context, but he will talk later on about their suffering for Christ's sake and suffering for the truth. So there's a sense of intimacy that we call out to God as our Father in times of suffering. Okay, so all of that was a long example of how there's been a word study. It's been very, very popular. I know very well-known, high-powered, reputable Bible teachers who have repeated that, and it doesn't make them false teachers, Yes.
I was just going to say, I thought about saying this last week, but we have word studies in Ladies Bible Study, but Sandy's extremely careful to do exactly what you're saying. And I can't think of the word. I'm trying to think of it on the way here. One particular word we've got numerous, we refer to it, well, in this situation it means this, and in this situation probably more than one.
Knowledge, probably.
Knowledge, yeah, that we keep coming across in all this,
Yeah.
right now in John, we're studying,
Mhm.
and it's very important. And
Mhm.
it makes a huge difference when we're studying it, to get it the right way.
Yes, that's right.
She's careful.
You know, context is so, so important. Another common mistake that's done in word studies is you take something like Strong's Concordance, it's a useful tool, and you find, it'll tell you what the Greek or the Hebrew word is, and you flip to the back, and it gives this long list of all the different ways that word is translated. The mistake is then to think that in every time the word shows up, it means all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And to take all those meanings and try to import it. I heard a well-known Bible teacher, he was taking the passage from Psalm 8. What is man that you take thought of him, the Son of Man that you visit him? And so then he traced out the word visit, which has a wide range of meaning. I mean, sometimes it means to judge, sometimes it means to actually visit in person, sometimes it means to care for, sometimes it means to search for. He took all of those meanings and imported them into that one verse. And see, that's what God does for us. Now, a lot of what he shared was good devotional material. Most of it wasn't wrong theologically, but it's not what that verse is saying, you know. And some of what he did say was wrong. But, yes.
So to visit back to the Abba Father, what is it about and I understand what you're saying, that we have a misconception when it's been taken out. What is it about the word daddy that takes away from the meaning of oh Father?
Daddy is usually restricted to the language of small children to their father, and children who often don't have a mature understanding of their relationship. So most adults, I know some do, but most adults don't refer to their father in that term. Some do, but generally don't. So I think it connotes a kind of
Not as respectful or
well,
something.
maybe there's an issue of respect, but I think there's a confusion of childlikeness and childishness.
Right.
You know, childishness is kind of implied a little bit with that. So it's a good question. Let's talk about some tools of the trade. Page 3 in your handout, some tried and mostly true and some new and improved tools for doing word studies. And I'm not even talking about Bible software here. I'm talking about hard books. Bible software is an excellent. I have 5 different platforms of Bible software. 3 of them I use a lot. But let's just talk about some simple books that you can get. The first kind of books we want to talk about are general concordances, as opposed to what goes in the blank underneath that, which is exhaustive concordances. And we'll talk about the differences between these two. General concordances these are the kinds of things that are found in the back of most of your reference Bibles. If you have a reference Bible, in the back there's a list of key words with passages, and oftentimes they'll even give you a little clip of the verse from which it's come. They're general, they're not exhaustive. They don't include every word or every instance. Some committee has tried to decide, which key words, which examples they want to give. And these are going to vary depending on what Bible version you're using, what publisher has printed the Bible, what edition of it they've got. So you can, of course, again, in the back of your Bible, sometimes there's even small, short concordances in separate books. An exhaustive concordance, though, these are comprehensive tools that list out every single occurrence of every single word in the Bible. And there are concordances not only for English Bibles, there's for Greek and Hebrew and everything else. Usually, they also have a number code with them it tells you how you can look up the Hebrew or the Greek word in the back of the book. And there's an example here in your handout. This is using the King James Bible and Strong's Concordance, looking at the word begotten. Begotten. So what they do there in that little box, you see they list out every single time that the English word begotten shows up in the Bible, Old Testament and New, and they list them from top to bottom in order of the books of the Bible. And you see the first instance, Genesis 5, verse 4, and the days of Adam after he had beef. They just don't want to write out the word. That's a shorthand. After he had begotten. And then to the right of that it says H3205. That means Hebrew word 3205. In the back of the concordance is a list of those Hebrew words and Greek words, and they'll give you a little definition. They'll tell you what the word is in Hebrew. They'll tell you how to say it in English, because you're not going to have, most of you might have an idea how to say it without that. And then they'll have a little definition, and then they'll list out every way that that word is translated in the King James Bible. There's the Leviticus and Numbers and Deuteronomy and Judges. And notice that there's one that's highlighted there from the Gospel of John, John 3:16. You see it right in the middle of the box. He gave his only son, his only begotten son, that whosoever, and of course it goes on, whosoever believeth in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. And you notice that to the right of it, there is a G 3439. G, that stands for Greek, and it's entry number 3439. That means, now those Greek words are put in alphabetic order, so all the Greek words, this is number 3439. And you can look up that word. Now down at the bottom of the page, I've given you a little clip. This is all there is. So at the very bottom of the page, there is G3439, monogenes. It's spelled first in Greek letters, and then right after it, it's spelled out in English letters. And it says it's from G3441. In other words, there's another Greek word that this is related to. You can flip further up to see it. And it's also related to Greek word 1096. And the meaning is only born, or in other words, soul, only begotten child. Now, some editions of Strong's Concordance will then list for you every single way that it's translated. It might be that begotten is the only way that this one is translated. Go back up to the chart above that, and would you look at the entry there for Acts 13:33? Thou art my son, this day I have begotten thee. You notice there, G1080. There's a different Greek word for begotten there. And you can look up in the back and find out what that word is. Look at the very bottom of the list. Revelation 1:5. The first begotten of the dead. Greek word 4416. Yet a different Greek word. So this is a pretty neat tool. This can help you if you don't know the original languages. This gives you a way to peek into what's going on there in the text underneath them. Exhaustive concordances. Now, Bible software has taken this and put it on steroids, because now what you do is you take your mouse. Let's say I've got my King James or my New American Standard Bible open. In the Bible software, I just take my mouse and I hover it over the word, and this pops up at the bottom of the screen, and saves a lot of time in flipping. Yes.
I'm just thinking, especially if English is your only language, so you don't realize that other languages have so many different meanings for one word. It's good to know to have this, because often we get stuck in, oh, this is what it means, because we speak English and this is the only thing it means.
Yeah, that's right.
But no, that's not the case.
That's right.
We have to think outside the box.
Yes. Very good. Okay, go to the back page of your handout. Some other tools. Well, actually, a couple comments about concordances. There are exhaustive concordances for most major Bible translations. They're all indebted to the numbering system invented in 1890 by James Strong. James Strong was a Bible scholar and theologian who created this numbering system for concordances. He prepared an exhaustive concordance for the King James. So today, if you pick up, they have an exhaustive concordance for the New American Standard. One of my seminary professors was the editor for that back in the 1970s or 80s. And, but they still use the numbers for Strong's. And there's an NIV, there's an ESV concordance, there's every major version has a concordance like that. And here's a caution related to something I brought up a moment ago. Do not apply is what I meant to say. Do not apply all of the listed meanings to any and every instance of the word. The entries in the back are summaries of the way the word is translated. They are not, and they're not infallible either. There are, over time, there's been improvements in our understanding of different words. So, it's a tool, but it's not the last word there is on word studies. Okay, some Bible dictionaries, good, better, and best. For a long, long time, the church has been served well by Vine's Expository Dictionary. Dr. Vine, 1940, produced a resource. He uses Strong's number system. So if you can find out what the Strong's number is, you can then open up in Vine's dictionary and read paragraph length treatments of that particular word. Now, he doesn't talk about every single word. He's selected words. And this has been a workhorse for decades. It's not without its shortcomings. There are some headings, some entries that are very, very brief. And some explanations are now considered out of date, but that's a great tool. It's very affordable, very easy to find. Number 2, the Hebrew-Greek Key Word Study Bible, produced by Spiros Zodhiates ministry. Any heard of Spiros Zodhiates? Interesting guy, native Greek guy. And some of his earlier work he kind of had this idea that his knowledge of modern Greek gave him a special insight into the Bible. But actually it was a problem because modern Greek is not the same as ancient Greek. So sometimes he and people who were working with him were importing modern ideas of Greek back into ancient Greek. And it was actually became a handicap. But over time his works have been edited. It combines information from Vine's and other respected tools. Early editions of this were guilty of plagiarism. There were lawsuits because he was quoting verbatim from other sources without giving credit, but that's all been settled now and that mostly corrected in later editions. So it's a tool I can recommend. Just don't buy the older ones because some of the older ones have some odd things there. For a study of Old Testament words, this is getting into the little bit more technical realm, but you can still use Strong's. If you don't read a word of Hebrew, you can still use the Strong's number to find your way in this book. That's the Theological Word Book of the Old Testament. The abbreviation that is often given is TWOT. And these are generally very well done studies of Hebrew with a little bit of Aramaic words.
Is that, what you're talking about is that if you look in a Strong's Concordance, you find numbers up to like 5 digits, I think.
Yes.
And so he's literally numbered every word in the Bible.
That's right.
Yeah. And you can take that to Vine's.
You can take it to Vine's. You can take the TWOT for Old Testament words. Yeah. There was a series, number 4, that started in 2003 that never finished. That's unfortunate. The Bible Knowledge Word Study series was a series of word study books going alphabetically through the Bible. It didn't finish, but what they did was good, and I'm not sure why it stopped. It was either that the editor was sidetracked, or died, or something like that. But maybe they'll finish it someday. If by chance your word that you're studying has been done, then that could be a place to go. And among one of the newer tools, I have it here on the podium, is Mounce's. His last name is Mounce, Dr. Robert Mounce. Mounce's complete expository dictionary of Old and New Testament words. This is relatively new. 2006 this came out, and it has really all of the good features of Vine's and improvements. It's easy to find your way through, and everything is in, excuse me, in alphabetic order. It's not a really thick book, as you can see. It's a little bit small, but this is considered now the best modern work of word studies for the serious layman. Now, if you're going on into seminary, or there are huge books that go into far more detail. This is written for a more popular audience. And then the last thing I would say is using commentaries. Good commentaries focus in part on the meaning of words in context. That's the value of a good commentary. They're dealing with how is the context using these words. Good commentaries will often affirm or correct popular notions about word meanings. And because commentators are looking not only at books like dictionaries like these, but they're also reading technical articles that most people aren't aware of. Maybe maybe you haven't known, but maybe for 15 years there's been an ongoing debate amongst Hebrew scholars as to what this one particular word means. And so at the University of such and such writes an article about it, and other people chew on it for a while, and then someone else writes a reply, and eventually they kind of come to a consensus about what a word like that means. You're not going to find information like that in Mounce or Vines, but in the newer commentaries, sometimes they will bring you up to speed on things like that. So these are some good tools. Maybe in a later date I'll have a projector in here, and we have an opaque projector where I can open it up and you can watch me pick away through a book. Questions, comments, critiques? Yes?
Today, it seems, in some senses, it seems unfortunate, but money has an awful lot to do with what gets done and not done, printed, not printed. But I don't know really, but it seems like, if you go back 100 years, some of those men, maybe there's another concordance too, Young's concordance.
The analytical concordance, yeah.
But some of that may have been done as in a sense for free. Maybe they didn't get paid. I don't know. Really, you may know a little bit of that history, but it just anyway. It's just too bad. It's a reality, but in a sense, it's too bad that
right.
money has to be so involved.
Yeah, that's right. Before we go, I'll give you a little illustration about how context determines word meanings. Over there on the floor, we have a little black furry friend, and when I saw the dog, I thought, cool. But if I go stand over there and put my hands up in front of the air conditioner and I say, cool, that means a totally different thing. Not even in the same room, but the word cool means totally different things. And it's all about context. What does the particular context draw out of the word? So whenever you're doing word studies, look at the particular context. And sometimes context defines words. If I'm in the pulpit and I say, that's wicked, I'm probably meaning that's a very bad thing. If I'm a skateboarder at a skate park and I say, that's wicked, I probably mean that was cool. Context, speaker, all of that makes a world of difference. And there are Bible words like that too, where the meaning, it really depends on the context.